trying to come up with nicknames for my kids to use with each other. We were talking about my son's in Minecraft, so he's talking about different nicknames. And he said, oh, well, you call me Otto because I like to use auto-creating spawners. Okay. And I was like, oh, Daddy used to have a ferret whose name was Otto.
Oh, that's awesome.
He named after the bus driver in The Simpsons. He's like, what's a ferret? So I show him a picture and I said, buddy, they're really smart. Yeah. And Max says, well, like how is he smart? And I said, well, he used to run up on my desk as a kid and he would bite the coiled cord on my phone and then jump off the desk and swing from it. And he would literally do this all the time. And he'd swing from it.
Little Tarzan ferret.
Yeah, and then he'd drop and it was super cute and always made me laugh and he would just do it over and over again. And Max just looked at me and I was like, oh my God.
Doesn't know that a phone has cords.
He doesn't know that a phone was. Exactly. So I said, buddy, phones used to not all be wireless. And I was like, have you ever seen a corded phone? I'm like, I'm not sure you've ever seen one.
Why? How would he?
Because we don't have one at the house. I haven't had a home phone in 20 years.
Sure.
And then I was like, oh, maybe you've seen one in your classroom at school. And he looks at me and he goes, you mean the banana? And I was like, no, buddy, a phone.
What's the banana?
We're talking about a phone. Like, what? Like, how are you distracted? And he goes, yeah, our teacher has one. It's just like this little black thing on the wall and they talk into the banana part of it. It's the phone. And I went,
That's a great way to describe it.
I literally laughed out loud and I was like, yeah, buddy, the banana phone.
Quiet, please.
How funny is that he describes it like a classic phone as a banana because
he's right.
And 4,
talk into the banana
3,
part.
2.
Company presents a truly terrible podcast. Welcome to Nonsense, Season 2, Episode 31. I'm Jeff Parker.
I am Stittle.
This is our take on the week's business, tech, and entertainment headlines. This time, we'll take a question from a listener about AI gaining consciousness.
Better than AI's gaining weight, which was the ones that always get forwarded towards me.
The Ozempic AI, is that what's happening?
That's why you can't get Wegovy, because ChatGPT is chewing it all up.
It's International Day of Charity. This day reminds us that simple acts of charity can alleviate the worst effects of humanitarian crisis and create more inclusive and resilient societies. I don't know, charity is great, but it's no substitute for systemic care for those in need.
Yeah, you would want the charity to be additional and not the baseline of support.
But nevertheless, happy International Day of Charity. How's your week going?
I don't know if you know this or not, but it's 1,000 fucking degrees outside.
Los Angeles is really hot right now.
What has happened?
Yeah.
Like, I'm melting. Like, I go outside, the sun's rays feel like they are probably, I don't know, maybe twice as close to the sun as we were last week.
You could hold up a hot dog and barbecue it.
Okay.
That's what it feels like.
I feel like it's a nudist reference. I wasn't sure where we were going with that. No, it's just been hot. Now, I know, we always have like more heat towards the end of the summer, but dude, it's like the same temperature in LA right now as Phoenix.
That's the part that's crazy.
That's insane.
We always get a last burst of heat somewhere in October.
End of summer.
This heat is crazy heat.
Yeah, it's nuts.
This time of
Super
year.
nuts.
Yeah.
Now, I will say, we don't talk about this, and I'm going to jinx it by saying it. We've had no brownouts in Southern California that I know of.
You don't want to say that aloud. No.
Presumably today our air conditioner is going to go out. But then we can't record the show.
Yeah.
And fortunately, we're on your patio where it's also 1,000 degrees. So thanks for.
It's a battery-powered recording station, so we won't go off the air.
But I will keep sweating, and that's all that really matters. It's been good. We're back into the rhythm of things here with the show, which is great. And as soon as it goes under 100 degrees, I will be more comfortable in our conversation.
Yeah, it's crazy out here.
How about you? How's your week been?
I'm filling my house with RISC-V chips, which is kind of cool. I'm on the cutting edge. I'm the hipster as far as modern chips go.
Yes, you're the nerd hipster.
I'm putting these millimeter wave presence sensors in my house. The goal is that when you walk around the house, you never have to touch a light switch magically.
Sure.
The lights turn up and turn down.
I love it.
Just as you need them, which is really cool. Mostly my family has not noticed that this occurs.
Yeah.
Magically, they just have stopped touching light switches.
Sure.
And they really don't think much about it. I took one of the RISC-V chips out. I was going to reflash it, just update the firmware. All of a sudden, I got these enormous complaints of, why don't the kitchen lights work? What's going on? 2 months ago, you were using a switch and you had no problem with it.
You were just fine.
Why is it now
what happened?
The world comes to an end because for 5 minutes, I have the RISC-V chip being flashed.
My Southwest flight from LAX to Vegas has no internet and people lose their fucking minds. And I'm like, it's 45 minutes. Read a book. Close your eyes.
For 50 years, we flew without internet. It's just fine. Let's get to our headlines.
All right, let's do it.
Oprah's upcoming AI television special sparks outrage among tech critics. On Thursday, ABC announced an upcoming TV special titled AI and the Future of Us, an Oprah Winfrey special. The 1-hour show set to air on September 12th aims to explore AI's impact on daily life and will feature interviews with figures in the tech industry like OpenAI's Sam Altman and Bill Gates. Soon after the announcement, some AI critics began questioning the guest list and framing the show in general.
So a couple things. One, I had no idea ABC was still a network. I thought they went away a while ago. So that was a bit of a surprise.
Well, they did for me because on DirecTV, the contract with Disney's expired. I don't get ABC.
You can't get ABC anymore. Oh, no. That's right. How'd you watch the SC game last weekend?
On my Sirius radio. It was the only way I could listen.
And speaking of, I know your dirty little secret about your home automation hipster bullshit.
Yeah.
You still have X10 in your house.
I do. The pool has X10, but that's all going away. We're gonna clean all that out. We're moving to matter over threads.
Is Oprah going to hand out AGIs like she does cars? Is that the plan?
You get an AGI and you get an AGI.
LLMs abound. Sure. Yeah, man, I don't understand. There's been a bunch of folks piling on this bandwagon about how terrible this show is going to be. I'm like, first of all, you haven't even seen it yet. So before you start bitching about how bad it's going to be, at least wait till it comes out.
Although it's interesting, she's got Sam Altman and Bill Gates, basically the two guys from the same organization.
All right.
OpenAI and Microsoft are pretty much one and the same.
No, they're not one and the same. You just want to get me all riled up, don't you? I'm not going to take the bait. I'm not taking the bait. No, they have like these other guests on there from like the Center for Humane Technology.
Yes, they do.
These guys, their mission statement is to sort of showcase the emerging risks posed by powerful and super intelligent AI.
Yeah.
That sounds like the other side, or at least another side of the story.
Christopher Wray, the former director of the FBI, is going to reveal the terrifying ways criminals and foreign adversaries are using AI.
I mean, I got to see it produced and see how it comes out. But I'm guessing it's not going to be all doomsday. They're just going to say, like, look, this is a technology and it comes with some other use cases and risks, like all technology has.
The printing press could print lies so fast.
Yeah, you're right.
Nothing changes.
But there's no mechanism to print truth with the printing press.
There was nothing to force truth. Yes.
Do you remember when color laser printers came out and they were literally embedding a weird like pattern in it so that if people tried to print money, they could, this is true.
I know.
There was like a watermark they would put in so that you could identify what printer it came from. I'm like, it's the fucking paper, people. You can't walk into Staples and be like, give me some of that nice dollar bill paper. Like, I mean, it would be super cool if you could, by the way.
Well, it got better because now there's like a ribbon in it. There's all kinds of technology in bills now.
Oh, yeah.
Just in time for bills to go away.
Well,
when's the last time you actually used cash? I don't even carry cash anymore. I tap to pay everything.
I'm okay with bills for a little while longer. Coins.
Yeah.
Coins have seen their day. Let's just pick a day. Kind of like when everybody switched from right-hand drive to left-hand drive in some countries. Just pick a day and we're just going to stop using coins. Just throw them all into the ocean and be done.
I went to Home Depot.
As one does.
You
own a home. You go to Home Depot.
I went to Home Depot and they didn't have tap to pay. And I hadn't been to Home Depot in a while.
Did your brain break?
Oh, and my brain broke. I was like, how do I pay? What do I do? You mean I actually put the credit card in a slot? What are we, barbarians?
Yeah. I was paying my dentist bill, a couple bucks, and I was like, I don't carry the card with me. I have it on my phone. Yeah. And I said, can I use Apple Pay? And she just looked at me. She's like, I don't know how to do that. And I was like, oh boy.
I had a root canal not too long ago.
I remember.
I tap to paid it.
Did you really?
I did.
By the way, that should not be enjoyable to us. That should just be like the normal thing, right? It should just be everywhere.
That was great that it worked. And the woman behind the counter was like blown away. She was like, wow, I've never seen that before.
I'm amazed when tap to pay works at gas stations. It's incredible number of gas stations that don't have tap to pay.
More and more of the gas stations that I go to now use tap to pay. It's great.
What is this show about again?
Apparently we're talking about banking.
I forgot. We're talking about gas stations and root canals. Anyway, so back to this Oprah AI special. I think this is super interesting. Everything she produces, I think, is always pretty great.
This will be the first introduction that most people get to behind the scenes AI. Marquez Brownlee's going to be on. I think that's really fun.
I saw that. I think that's super interesting. I mean, not somebody I would think of as an expert in AI. However, a lot of technology is sort of trends are gotten from him by people.
Because he's also really a great communicator and a great communicator for things that are technological. I mean, he's able to explain things in a way that big audiences can understand what he's talking about. Bugs and performance issues hinder Huawei's AI chips. China's effort to match U.S. computing power and artificial intelligence are being hampered by bug-ridden software, with customers of leading AI chip maker Huawei complaining about performance issues and the difficulty of switching from NVIDIA products.
Wait a minute. So do I understand this correctly? Software has bugs in it?
Especially this is like version 2.
Oh, man. Fire up the presses. How are we going to do this? Give them a little more time. I'm pretty confident they're going to get caught up pretty well. Whether or not they can lead will be determined.
You and I debate that. I think that China will have no trouble leading in plenty of areas. You know what I'm going to say here?
It's going to be something. I want a new co-host.
It's going to be Anker.
Anker. Oh, yeah.
You and I both use Anker products. We both swear by Anker products.
They're great.
100% Chinese made.
And a lot of brand trust in Anker for sure.
Because they make great stuff. And they've made great stuff for years.
Yes. Excellent batteries and cables.
Power sources too. Your wall wart adapters, Anker. I mean, that's what mine are.
Hey, sweetie, what do you want to buy? A GM, a BMW, or an Anker car? I'm going to skip the Anker car. Actually, to be honest, I probably would buy an Anker car.
You would totally buy the Anker car because it's probably great.
If they put their brand on it. Yeah, if they put their brand on it.
It's probably really well engineered because that's what their products are.
They do have good engineering, but we're talking about like leading AI. Like, I didn't think it's a big jump to go from we make really good USB-C power warts to leading AI.
Yeah, I don't think it's that big of a jump.
You don't think so?
Good engineering is good engineering. Good motivation for engineers to put out their best work. When they figure all that out, Chinese engineers will be every bit as good as everybody else.
Sure.
You and I are going to fight over this one. This one's a tough story right here.
More of them.
Minecraft's first movie trailer has arrived, and it's incredible.
Finally, something we can agree on. This is our olive branch, right? This is the one thing the sun comes up in the east comment that we can agree on.
For 10 years, we've been promised a Minecraft movie. And
isn't this crazy?
And the trailer is finally here.
They announced this 10 years ago.
Yeah.
You guys really took this whole software development thing to heart, and you took your time.
But it paid off. I mean, the trailer's
looks
great. It looks perfect.
Yeah. I don't want to give it away. Because there's a couple funny little jokes in the trailer that I don't want to give away. But
we'll link it in the show notes.
They've like taken the 8-bit chunkiness of the Minecraft world and rendered it in CG
for 4K.
Yeah, for 4K or 8K. I don't know how many Ks we're up to now. Lots of Ks, and it looks great. But it still looks like Minecraft. It still looks like a chunk. It's really great, and I'm excited to see this.
Okay, enough of the headlines. Up next, we're going to take a question from our mailbag about AI consciousness. Okay, this should be a fun debate.
Debate? No, debate is when both sides have like reasonable standing and are actually discussing a point. This is going to be me talking about how AI is conscious and you just yelling at the fucking ocean. Stop with the waves. Okay, sure thing, Uncle Jeff. You're fine. Just keep yelling, buddy.
Awesome. Let's go.
I'd like to go on record on this recording to say that you're the one that wanted to do this. Let's just be very clear here.
I like this topic.
This isn't like I'm putting a gun to your head.
I like this whole subject, but I think it's going to be a tough thing for us to make a sensible discussion out of.
Okay, first of all, why start with sensible now in episode 80? Why would we go that way? Second, this is debatable, but we can presume you have been conscious for a number of decades. So it's not like this is an unfamiliar...
No, don't even start. There's a thing I'm supposed to read at the top of this.
It's terrible.
And let me read that and pretend we haven't actually started.
Sure.
I don't know if you know this or not, but we actually have listeners. That's something we got in season 2, I think.
Don't believe you.
I thought this week we could pull an easy question from our listener mailbag and talk about it. What do you think?
Oh, this is a terrible idea. They're going to ask me to like force rank my top 5 buffets, aren't they?
I want to know now, what are your top 5 buffets?
Ever since Hometown Buffet went away, I've been very reluctant to share my secrets, I'm afraid.
What happened to Hometown Buffet?
I think COVID killed them. They were already like on their deathbed.
Oh.
How do you make the economies of an all-you-can-eat buffet work?
How do you make the economies of a restaurant work, period? The whole thing.
Yeah, that too.
We're going to do a segment on why not to go into the restaurant business.
that should be very short and easy of just like, you're not going to make money and you're going to work your ass off.
You and I have so derailed. The topic of this is not supposed to be.
We haven't even started.
We're supposed to play back a clip of someone telling us what we should discuss. And
we are just 2 squirrels with shiny aluminum balls, just aluminum foil balls, just batting them around.
I don't particularly mind that.
Okay, I want to hear this clip.
Okay. The question's about consciousness, not all you can eat crab legs.
Boring.
So here, let's let our listener, Pranay Sharma, explain.
Hey, Jeff and CJ. Love the AI episode collection. Keep them coming. I got a question. At what point do you think you would consider your children transitioning from purely instinctive beings to being conscious individuals? And to follow up on that, maybe we can use that to define some conditions or parameters that you believe are necessary to identify consciousness, and then maybe apply that to AI. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, so it's a great question.
It is a great question.
I have an 18-year-old. He just started college.
Yeah.
He's living on his own in a dorm, the whole thing. I am hoping that consciousness comes in soon. I'm optimistic that will happen at some point.
I think there's a consciousness GE that you have to take your sophomore year where they just teach you consciousness.
I hope so.
I also would like to just really quickly make a true admission here. I started reading programming books at a very young age.
Boy, there's some fun reading.
I did. They weren't even picture books. I never got to converse with a human. I just had to read a book about this shit.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And literally for about probably 10 years, you may have been the person that corrected me on this. Instead of saying parameters, I said parameters.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Because that's what it looks like.
Sure.
Do you remember that?
100%.
I used to be like, I'm passing in the parameters. And I think you just looked at me like I was an idiot.
parameters.
And you were like, no, parameters. And I was like, yeah, same thing. Same.
I've always said you have to have 2 lexicons. You have to have a reading lexicon and a speaking lexicon, because some words are not said the way that they're written.
Right? I mean, you know what I'm talking about.
100%.
It's a great question. Consciousness is a fascinating topic.
Yeah.
So your argument is that consciousness begins around 20.
I'm hoping. No, I see no signs of that yet.
You're optimistic.
But they tell me it comes. No, seriously. Your kids are both conscious.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think for children, I got to believe consciousness begins in utero.
Oh, really?
Yes, of course. I think so. But that's the thing. What's the definition of consciousness? Like,
this is going to be the problem with this entire segment.
There's no definition.
Because there is no good definition.
And my view on this, not to jump to the answer, but like consciousness has is this bizarre definition that we're grasping at as humans. And to me, I feel like we have already put into it some sort of human construct. Like if it's not human, then it can't be conscious because we are.
I don't think that's true. My dog is very conscious.
Well, that's what's fascinating, right? Is you think about animals and you go, well, wait a minute, are animals conscious?
Yeah.
And where do you draw the line?
Are insects conscious? Well, I think absolutely. How would you say that ants are not conscious?
Ants. You're going straight to ants.
I don't have to go right to ants. Go to any insect you want. That's an easy one because they do look like they are operating with purpose. They do look like they're self-aware. They do look like they have agency. I could be totally wrong, but it doesn't appear that way to me.
Ants. You think ants are self-aware?
You don't think they are?
I think the ant is following the smell of the other ant's ass in front of it, and that's all it's doing. And then it goes and it puts the shit in the cave, and then it goes back out. Unless you're the queen.
Somebody had to be in front to go find the stuff in the first place.
Oh, it's chicken and egg. I don't know where the first one went.
Okay.
There was one ant.
He just found the carcass by accident and was hauling it back to the cave.
Ants are fascinating. I really want to know more about ants. Their approach to finding shit is to just walk everywhere. And then once they find it, they start laying down a trail to it. And then more ants follow. It totally works. Right? It completely works.
We talked about this before. Survival of the fittest, which is absolute nonsense. Do you want to struggle in life? Do that survival of the fittest thing. You want to thrive in life. Sure. Survival of the friendliest is the strategy that gets you the most success.
Sure. I mean, look, if you go deep down this, or deeper down this animal conscious rabbit hole, I'm pretty sure Descartes said only humans have a non-physical mind. Right? I think he was one of the first to separate the mind from the brain. Like you have a brain, which is some blob of matter, but then you have this concept of a mind, and the mind is somehow not matter, and that only humans could have a non-physical mind, right? That was his postulation. I have a real hard time accepting that. Like I get you can...
I'm just about to say, that's utter complete nonsense.
It's garbage, right? I mean, I get what they're saying, but to me, you're just saying like, we can't describe this thing, so we're going to just make up it's something else.
But also, how do you know that animals don't have a similar thing? I mean, all you have is matter. You're a bunch of atoms. That's all there is. There's nothing else to it.
Careful. No, you start butting up on the religious conversation, and then people start talking about the boogeyman that bestows upon you the thing and the soul, and when you die, the 7 grams goes away because the soul leaves out of your nose, or wherever the fuck it goes. Like
I don't know any of this story.
You don't know any of this?
7 grams?
Yeah, there's a whole belief that like if you like lay somebody on their deathbed on a table, when they die, like 7 grams or 32 grams or I don't know, a fucking ounce.
Oh my word. Is this true?
No, it's not fucking true, but people believe it. People are running around saying that when you die, when your soul leaves, there is some measurable amount of mass that changes.
I mean, water is coming out of your rotting corpse every second you're laying there. So you are getting lighter. They're not wrong about that.
Remember at the top of the segment when we said we had listeners? That might not be true anymore. I did not have rotting corpse on my bingo card, but you know,
I do feel like you need a more informed co-host because I don't know what the 7 grams thing is.
I don't pay attention to some of this nonsense. It's like the flat earth bullshit. Like, no, like the sun and the dome and we live in a big biosphere. I don't know. They just make a bunch of shit up. Okay. But I will say, I remember this vaguely.
So finish this. I get lighter when I die.
Oh, you want to go back to that? Yeah, there's supposedly when you die, there's a measurable amount of loss that doesn't happen while you're breathing.
The moment you die.
Yes.
Because obviously there's loss the entire time you're dead. From the time you die until you're dust, you are constantly losing water.
Yes.
Are you looking it up?
21 grams, not 7 grams. Sorry, I was on the Ozempic death soul.
21 grams? That's measurable weight. I mean, I have drones that are 21 grams.
At the exact moment of death, you, me, and everyone else will lose precisely 21 grams in weight. That's the
How
belief.
do you know that? Do we have people on scales as they die so we can see the adjustment when they pass? How do we know this?
As I've said before, as if fat people don't have enough problems. You're gonna put them on scales or they die, and you're like, well,
how else do you know that? How do you know they dropped 21 grams?
You went from 180 kilograms down to 179.89 kilograms.
How do they observe this?
Supposedly, the origin of this can be traced to Duncan McDougall, a doctor working in Massachusetts in the early 1900s. He had a keen fascination with death and spent part of his career on an almost obsessive hunt for evidence of the soul. He thought that if humans had a soul, it must exist in the body as some kind of material.
And it had weight.
And that material must weigh something.
Yeah.
Part of the problem is you got like Descartes saying that you've got matter in the brain and then the mind.
Clearly, Descartes was saying it's not matter.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it doesn't align with this, right? Now, they're not. Right. I don't think these theories were coupled, but McDougall set up to test his theory with what has been referred to as an excruciatingly bad experiment. McDougall hunted around for people who were dying of tuberculosis.
Okay.
And it seemed to me to be the best to select a patient dying with a disease that produces great exhaustion, the death occurring with little or no muscular movement, because in such a case, the beam could be kept more perfectly at balance and at loss occurring readily noted. He literally put dead people on a fucking beam scale. This is like straight out of Holy Grail.
As they were dying? 'Cause
While
you
they were
can't-
dying.
Once they're dead, it's too late.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Thank you for explaining how cause and effect works. I appreciate that. McDougall managed to recruit a mere 6 dying patients for his study, 4 of whom had tuberculosis. In turn, each was tucked up in his modified bed and their weight monitored until some minute after their death. Any bowel movements or urination at death were fine, at least so far as experiments were concerned, because it all stayed on the bed, which is lovely.
Disgusting.
And something I like to think about around lunchtime. Sure. You know, because he was so scientific, he then repeated the study with 15 dogs. And according to his religious beliefs, were not blessed with souls.
Oh.
It's not clear how he managed to get dogs to die without rocking the bed, but some people suspect he gave them a cocktail of drugs or something to kill them, which is fantastic.
Well, yeah, I don't imagine there are a lot of dogs with tuberculosis.
Yeah, running around and letting you know. At the end of his foray into science, McDougall declared that humans lost up to 3/4 of an ounce upon death.
You're saying this somehow, I'm going to bring this back to consciousness if it kills me.
What were we talking about?
And how it relates to AI. When does an AI become conscious, I think is what we're ultimately leading toward.
Yeah. But you and I agree because, you know, we are subscribers to that newsletter called Science.
Yes.
That we're all just a bunch of atoms. We're all just a bunch of star parts assembled into some order through evolution, through, you know, DNA.
Sure.
So you've got a handful of, in our case, maybe half a handful of neurons that are bouncing around.
Sure.
And that's what makes you.
Yes.
And that intelligence, right? I feel like we're ascribing into that intelligence some construct of consciousness because we can make decisions about things.
Okay.
Consciousness gets weird because what happens when you're sleeping? Are you conscious?
No, the whole point of sleeping is to be unconscious.
Here's the thing. When you're dreaming, it is believed that you're in a, quote, conscious state because you will have
Is
recollection.
that true? I've never heard that.
Well, again, it depends on who you ask.
Yeah.
There's no consensus on any of this. It seems like because you have recollection, it seems to fit into the definition of consciousness.
By the way, to make the case for animals, my dog dreams.
Oh, for sure.
Does that have something to do with him having a consciousness?
Well, I want to get to that. Do you know what a Necker cube is?
No.
Okay, let me do this with you. I did not tell you about this beforehand because I wanted to broadside you with this.
Spring it on me fresh.
Okay, what do you see?
A cube.
Okay, this is a Necker cube, right?
Okay.
Do you see it going up to the right?
Well, both, because it's a 2D drawing that is meant to...
But how do you see it?
I see it both ways.
Okay.
By the way, I can also see the MC Escher one that is got the front that's dented in and the back that's dented out. I can see it in all those directions.
But when you first look at it, the Necker cube is an example of where people say you have sort of a conscious influence.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're going to see it one way or the other. A fascinating bit of information. There was a guy who lost his eyesight at birth and then regained it through an operation when he was like the age 50.
Amazing.
They showed him a Necker cube and he did not see a 3D object. What he saw were flat 2D lines.
Because that's what's there.
That's what's there, exactly. But the brain looks at this and goes, oh, I've seen you before. You are actually this, right? The brain tries to put it into a category of something you've seen before. And what I think is really interesting about the Necker cube is most people see it as a cube going up to the right. Most people are not superheroes like you. Most people see it as a cube going up to the right. The belief being that you see most objects in life from the top down.
Okay.
You're looking down at things in front of you. And there are tricks that you can do to force your brain to flip the Necker cube so you can see it going up to the left.
Sure.
And I think that's really fascinating to me. Down to
It's
the
a
left.
2D rendering. How do you not see it both ways?
Well, you might be, I mean, I'm not joking now. You might be super unique. Most people, like virtually everyone, looks at this and sees it one way or the other.
That's cool.
And you can get it to flip.
I'm impressed by that.
I see it bottom going to the right. I can force myself to flip it, but I have to focus on certain parts of the drawing.
I have to tell myself this is supposed to be a 3D representation.
Interesting.
Because to me, it's a 2D thing with a bunch of lines, and I go, yeah, okay, I know they mean that to be a cube.
So you're an alien.
I don't know about that, but okay.
Step one. Anyway, I think this is fascinating, right? So this starts to talk about, like you start to figure out, is that a determination of consciousness because you have now ascribed to some other part of reality, some other part of life?
Because I've drawn something that represents something else?
Because you've drawn something that you are able in your brain to match to something else. I think it's fascinating to use something like a Necker cube in the definition of consciousness.
Are you arguing that I'm not conscious because I can't see this as 3D unless I just ascribe 3D-ness to it?
Well, I wasn't starting that way, but now a lot of the pieces are starting to fit together.
Is that where you're going?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm I've got bad news and worse news. There's a whole nother, like, I don't want to say a derivative of this, but there's a whole other set of experiments around response priming that I think are fascinating.
What does AI see when it looks at the Necker cube?
That's ultimately where I want to take this conversation. It's like thinking about the AI, right? That's what Pranay asked. Do you know about the Chinese room?
No, but apparently in this episode, I've not heard of anything.
Well, you're not conscious, first of all. We just figured this out.
You were losing 21 grams at the beginning of this episode. episode. And I had no idea what that was.
Isn't that fascinating?
No, it's kind of creepy, actually.
You know what? I'm going to make a commitment right here. You know, as people like me donate their organs and people want to donate their body to science.
Yeah, of course.
That's what I want. I want to be the guy that disproves the 21 grams. I'm going to just sleep on a scale every night with a little pressure sensor that just records just in case I happen to bite it at night.
The minute you buy the scale and put it into your bedroom, you're going to live forever. You're going to live to be...
Exactly.
You're going to be 140 years old.
The fountain of youth is putting a scale in under your bed that never proved this. So there's this argument called the Chinese room argument. Okay. It's been around for a little while. It was postulated by John, I think his last name is pronounced Cyril. This was in the mid 2000s, I think, is when he postulated this. What he's basically saying is if he sat in a room, he's an English speaker, native English speaker, doesn't speak any other languages. If he had a code book that showed him Chinese characters in and the Chinese characters that you respond out, if you saw those characters, and people passed a piece of paper under the door with some Chinese characters on it, and he gave the response and passed it back under the door, in theory, that would pass the Turing test.
Because he appears to be responding to them.
He appears to be a human. He appears to be responding to those things. He's like, if you did the same thing with English and you had an English code book, he could infer from the questions that were asked and responses what's happening. He would be knowledgeable about what's happening.
Right.
But he's saying that in that latter case, that's a better definition of consciousness because he, quote, knows what's happening. He knows what's going on.
That seems like a key component of consciousness, to know what is going on.
The understanding,
to be meta-aware, to be aware that you are aware.
The end of his argument is that without this understanding, right, or intentionality, we cannot describe what the machine is doing and thinking since it does not think. It does not have a mind in the normal sense of the word. Now, I agree with that. I agree that it doesn't have a mind within the normal sense of the word. But to me, that just means the definition of the word is fucked up. Of course, it's not a human mind. It's not a bunch of meat. So it's not that. But that doesn't mean that it's not thinking. That's my view. This appeared in his 1980 paper. So it's been around, this concept's been around for quite some time. This apparently has been the biggest talking point amongst cognitive science. David Cole wrote that, quote, the Chinese room argument has probably been the most widely discussed philosophical argument in cognitive science to appear in the past 25 years.
And yet this is my first hearing of it.
This is your first time hearing of it, yeah. Like basically somebody had described cognitive science just in this, like that's all this is just people talking about this one postulation. Yeah. And I get what they're saying. I get there's this like squishiness around understanding what you're doing, right? And we have some concept of that understanding is. Yeah. Here at the end of the day is my problem with this argument. When you are born, you don't have any knowledge of the things humans have done. Like you don't know math, you don't know science, you can't read.
You aren't born knowing all history.
And presumably you have some what we call instincts, some things that are baked in. I question that. I'd like to dive deeper down that. I mean,
you have to have some sort of instinct.
Yes, of course. But what is an instinct, right?
It's the BIOS.
Yeah, well,
it literally is the thing that says, you better get some food.
Got a lot of bugs. I hope mine's at least EFI.
Exactly.
God, Jesus Christ. Am I still NBR? Am I still running NBR? Because if you fuck up that first sector, you are fucked. It's game over. And by the way, if you don't know these BIOS jokes, you should not be listening to this show.
When you come out of the womb after, some amount of time, your instincts are saying you need to get some food. You need to get something in your... Yeah. And your instinct drives you.
But digression. When you are a deer and you pop out as a deer mammal, you kind of immediately know how to stand and walk and eat.
Or you would get eaten. You would be dead,
eaten, right?
Yeah, you would not have survived.
But it's like a baby. If a baby pops out and you're just like, hey, good luck.
A human baby.
Fuck off. Like it just dies. A human baby.
Yeah, for sure.
Not gonna...
Rarely will a baby be born with the instinct to like drive itself to a Denny's.
Well, I did.
Once in a while.
True story. Wasn't even released from the hospital, and I just went right to the fucking IHOP and got me some sprinkled cupcake pancakes.
Sure.
There's this loose postulation that because our brains are so much more advanced, you don't have as much preloaded in ROM to make more room in RAM, which kind of makes sense, I guess, if you use the computer analogy. So there's this level of like understanding, and my problem is, as I'm starting to say, is like you're just this meat. It's this neural network.
That's all I got is meat.
We've mapped out this neural network. So my very ignorant, or I should say, maybe not ignorant, maybe uneducated belief is like, well, if you have the same system of neurons created in some other mechanism, I don't care if it's digital bits and bytes or Jello, if you have the same basic mechanism, to me, I go, well, that's just a mind. You've got a mind now. And then, well, okay, what's our definition of consciousness? And I feel like people are just really stuck on this, like the notion of the human vessel. Like it's the vessel is the problem.
This is what I want to do. I want to back up because you and I both think dogs are conscious, right?
Yes.
It does seem like they are. They do seem to know right from wrong. They do seem to be semi-self-aware. If my dog walks up up to a mirror, he knows he's looking at himself. He doesn't think he's looking at another dog.
Let's pause on that for a second.
As a puppy, he did, but as a dog, he does not.
Let's pause on that for a second, because that right there, what you just said, has been formalized. This is what it's a study around self-awareness.
Super important, I think, for discussion of consciousness.
So Gordon Gallup in the 70s developed this thing called the mirror test. And the test examines whether animals are able to differentiate between seeing themselves in a mirror versus seeing other animals. And the classic way they did this was they put a spot of coloring on the skin or fur near the individual's forehead.
Okay.
And then they'd see if they try to remove it or at least touch it when looking in the mirror. That's your self-awareness. You have an image of yourself. You look in the mirror, there's a big, red splotch on your forehead, and then you try to touch it. Meaning, like, if you try to touch it, you probably recognize that that's you, right? And you can try to touch it. Humans older than 18 months and other kind of great apes, bottlenose dolphins, orcas, pigeons, European magpies, and elephants have all been observed to pass this test. Very hard for me to say that those aren't some level of consciousness.
Has to be. You're self-aware.
Because they're self-aware. And I go, okay, if you take that same test and you apply it to ants, it's not going to work. Doesn't mean an ant's not conscious. I'm just saying in this case, an ant's not going to determine self-awareness. Let's jump forward for a second to an AI. That's going to be the easiest thing in the world to get an AI to know.
Right.
Like, that's not going to be hard.
He moves exactly the same way I move. That's me.
Yeah, exactly. And you look and go, okay, what's this red thing? Okay, cool.
But he's never self-aware in doing that. He's just following a set of instructions.
But aren't we all? Isn't that all self-awareness is a set of instructions?
I think the ability to not follow the self-instructions is really what consciousness is all
that's
about.
Interesting. And also petrifying in this context.
If you ever read the book, The Eternal Golden Braid, Gödel Escherbach, An Eternal Golden Braid, one of the things he has in it is a little, he calls it the Moo puzzle. And it's a series of instructions.
Okay.
And you have to follow these instructions to get out of the puzzle, right?
Yep.
You have to rigorously follow the instructions. And you'll sit there and you'll do it and you'll do it and you'll do it. A computer will do that puzzle infinitely.
Sure.
A human at some point will go, oh, I give up. There's no way.
Sure.
You will disobey the rules and quit.
Sure.
Whereas a computer necessarily wouldn't, could be stuck in that loop forever.
Have you not seen War Games?
Yeah.
The only way to win is not to play. It figured it out. That was 1983. The fucking Whopper, for Christ's sake. What do you mean? It got the answer. Okay, so I love that example. Well, I don't know it as well. I get the gist of it.
Read the book. It's fantastic.
The current state we are in 2024 with AIs. Do you think an AI would struggle with that? Like the ability to be like, oh no, I shouldn't do this. Like, I've done this 20 times. This is dumb. I end up in the same place.
I don't know. Now I'm kind of curious if I put that puzzle into an AI, exactly what happens.
Well, there goes our weekend.
I don't want to be responsible for burning down Gemini, though.
I love what's on the news. Like 8 data centers caught fire today at the same time. They're like, we got that IP address in Beverly Hills. And I'm like, uh-oh. I know who did this.
It's the Moo puzzle.
I really don't see any problem with that being a thing.
By the way, instead of just abandoning the puzzle, the AI probably in a split second will tell you, oh, here's why you can never solve this.
Exactly. We had that AI episode from a couple weeks ago. And like, once you think about the difference between the mouth breather and Einstein, and then you go through Einstein and you get to all of humanity, of course it's going to fucking know this. Yeah. Like, we're going to be the ones going, well, why don't you try it again? And it's going to be like, no, stupid meatware human. Here's why. It's just giving you the answer.
It can explain what the problem is quickly.
On this note, and I think you will appreciate this, the presumption is that thinking about conscious machines was probably first discussed by whom? Who do you think was probably one of the first 1 or 2 people to discuss this?
Wolf Blitzer.
No, Lovelace.
Oh, wow.
So in a set of notes written in 1842 about the analytical engine invented by Babbage, which was, arguably the precursor to modern computers, Lovelace was essentially dismissive of the idea that a machine such as the analytical engine could think in a human-like way. And what she actually wrote, I thought this was somewhat fascinating.
Well, at this point, it doesn't. It will have to be completely redesigned to get anywhere close to that.
Okay, pause. I want to come back to that. She wrote, It is desirable to guard against the possibility of exaggerated ideas that might arise as to the powers of the analytical engine. The engine has no pretensions whatever to originate anything. It can do whatever we know how to order it to perform. It can follow analysis, but it has no power of anticipating any analytical relations or truths. Its provenance is to assist us in making available what we are already acquainted with. And that seems aligned with your point, right? Your point seems to be basically aligned with that. Like, it'll do whatever we tell it to, and it'll do that great, but it won't do anything else.
And it's using mathematics to do it. That is not how your mind necessarily works.
Set aside for the mathematics for a second. That general concept, right? I think of that as that is procedural programming view. That is a position of the world that is done with procedural programming that you and I have grown up on. And I 100% agree with that in that context. But that's not the world that we're in now. This isn't a long script where we've told it what to do and educated it on things.
No, for sure.
You've taught it how to learn.
There are nodes, correct.
So I think that changes everything. And I look at that and I go, you just hand it things and it figures out things better than any human ever has.
Right.
How can it not develop a level of consciousness? Now, that brings up all sorts of these weird problems because then you go, well...
Because it's made wrong.
Well, you can't...
The model is wrong.
But is it? How do we know it's wrong? It's the best model of the brain we have.
And it's not a very good model. First of all, the brain, even across sections of the brain does not work in a unilateral way.
Of course.
Different parts of the brain work in completely different ways.
Okay.
And the fact that you've got this huge bottleneck of moving memories into processing will slow, if not stop, consciousness from occurring in a computer just because the machine is designed well.
I don't find this argument compelling that you need to have transmission between the brain parts in order to be, quote, conscious. That's what we do. I understand that that's what we do, but I don't think that's the only path.
Yeah.
That seems like a very narrow definition of conscious. If you want to call it human conscious has to look like this, fine. I've got no problem with that. But if you're going to call it that, then of course human conscious can't fit a non-human.
So we both agree that dogs are conscious beings, mostly.
I think so. I mean, there's something like 8 levels of consciousness that have been identified. It doesn't hit all of them, but the point is you don't have to hit all of them to be consciousness. It hits some of them.
What doesn't it hit? And mostly is it the poodles who are not hitting it?
It's mainly the poodles and the labradoodles. I think the labradoodles are the ones that are missing the most.
Could be the labradoodles, sure.
This is William Lycan, argued in his book Consciousness and Experience that at least 8 clearly distinct types of consciousness can be identified. And it was organism consciousness, control consciousness, consciousness of state event consciousness, reportability, introspective consciousness, subjective consciousness, and self-consciousness. And there's even more obscure forms, but he was sort of saying like these are the basic types of consciousness.
Consciousness is a continuum. It is not a binary thing.
That really seems to be the answer. And by the way, that's part of why I think this is bullshit. It's squishy. This is pornography. You don't know it until you see it and you go, yeah, that sounds conscious. Like I look at ants and I go, an individual ant I'm not sure is consciousness.
Come back up from the ant. We started with dogs. We think dogs are mostly conscious. Other insects, I mean, before you get to insects,
where's the line?
Are mice conscious?
I don't know. Not an insect. It's a mammal.
No. I'm jumping up from insects. So I'm going back toward dogs because I want to go, are mice conscious? At what level are we conscious or not conscious?
I feel like a mouse might be conscious, might fit into the world of consciousness to me. Where's the line?
Yeah.
Is a fish conscious?
This is what I'm asking you.
Fish doesn't feel conscious. Fish feels like a robot. It feels like input, output.
No, fish feel very conscious.
Fish?
Yes.
Not dolphins, like fish.
I know. I understand the difference. Oh my gosh.
I don't know what you people eat in Beverly Hills. I can't be sure. Down getting the bottlenose dolphin down at the sushi restaurant. I can't be sure.
The fish does seem to be aware of this is what I'm supposed to do. This is not what I'm supposed to do.
Instead of having all of these big words that are philosophical and complicated, I feel like instead we just need a very nice like numbering system.
Levels of consciousness.
And then you've got like level 1 consciousness up to level 100, and you just fill in the gaps in the middle.
You can do it in 5 steps. You don't even need that much refinement. I don't need to go 1 to 100.
I don't know. I don't know if I can do it in 5 because here's why. Here's what I'm going to say next. It'll be not controversial at all. So if you have a gradient of consciousness. It certainly doesn't apply across multi-species, right? That's why we have the gradient. You're going to put species into the different buckets all the way up. Within a species,
you'll have a great variation.
You have a gradient.
Right, of course.
Not all humans have the same level of consciousness. And this is the hierarchy of needs, right? You have the hierarchy of needs. So does that, I don't think it's 1-to-1 to consciousness, but I think people, at least as I think of consciousness in quotes, you have folks that are more conscious than others. I'm not sure people want to handle that. I'm not sure people really want to accept that, I'm a 92 on the consciousness scale and you're a 54. And I'm like,
well, this is why I'm saying let's not break it down into that kind of refined scale. Let's make it.
Oh yeah, but I want to piss people off.
Okay, well,
I like setting the new high score.
If that's your goal, you're going to succeed.
Which, by the way, does not mean in golf what you think it does. I've made that mistake more than once. You get to AIs and you go, well, what's the gist? Like is the AI conscious or not? Right? I think that was part of Pranay's question.
I think we're a very long way away from an AI that is conscious.
You think so?
Oh yeah, I think we can pass the Turing test in about 5 minutes. We're going to be able to pass the Turing test. But I think as far as actually being conscious, where it can initiate things on its own, where it has its own thoughts, where it's actually truly self-aware, not just solving a puzzle.
Sure.
I think we're a long ways away from that.
Define long ways away.
It's impossible to use units of time that mean anything in computers because one day a computer will weigh no more than
1.5 tons.
1.5 tons, right?
God, I love that quote.
Any prediction you make is going to be idiotic, before you turn around.
But just give me a range. Are you thinking you say a long time away? You mean like hours?
No,
weeks?
I mean we are decades away.
Decades away.
At least decades decades away
At
from
least
having
decades away.
what we would call consciousness. And I'm not even sure it's even possible.
I think it's a greater 50% chance that you have consciousness in this decade, and it's already half gone.
You have such inefficiencies until you redesign completely how the computer works to achieve consciousness.
Really? Oh,
the way your
man.
brain works is completely different from how a computer works. Your brain is not moving things from memory into processing so that things can be
mine
computations
sure
can
as
happen.
fuck isn't. It used to, but it doesn't anymore. It's just, I don't even think it's worth talking about the Turing test anymore because we've clearly crossed that bridge. Like, you're done. You need now levels of.
In many areas we have, in some areas we haven't. I think we're going to cross Turing, in the next 2 years.
But not. That's fascinating to me. So you see the progression through that, and we cross Turing in, like you said, whatever, 0 to 2 years from now. Great. You and I can shake hands on that one.
Yeah.
But then you go, well, now it's going to be decades until you've got consciousness. And I look at those two and I go, tightly coupled. Once you cross that Turing test, you are not far away from being able to get that thing. Again, knowledge of all humanity, where it is maybe even more like a conscious level that we don't even have. A level of consciousness that is so far beyond.
Fooling a human that you are a human, that doesn't seem like that high of a bar.
Of course not. I've met us.
To actually truly have consciousness seems like a way higher bar.
Oh, I don't know.
Not to fool someone that you have consciousness, but to actually have consciousness.
But what's the difference between fooling somebody and actually having what is the difference? Articulate the difference to me in humans. Your position is that because it is shaped differently and works differently, you have a hard time ascribing it consciousness because it works differently than the human brain.
It works on mathematics. It does not have inner imagery. It does not have inner speech. It does not have inner pain, pleasure, emotions, perception.
And those are necessary for consciousness.
I have a feeling those things are going to be requirements.
I mean, I just think you're running out of stuff. You're running out of stuff that you go, well, this is well guarded. This is human. Only I can do this. It's like, no, like you keep making it better.
I'm not saying necessarily that the computer isn't better. Look at humans. We have no absolute scale of temperature. Put your hand in an ice cold bucket of water. Now put your hand in a lukewarm bucket of water. It feels like you're in hot water.
Sure.
Because we have a relative scale of most things.
Sure.
Again, we were talking about things that are instincts.
It's like a wiring problem.
Herd mentality.
Yeah.
It's both kept us alive and allowed us to thrive and survive.
Sure.
It also makes us do really stupid things.
Of course.
We have lots of shortcuts in our brain that have both allowed us to survive and also are to our detriment.
I mean, I have to believe every one of those shortcuts is modelable. I'm not saying you should model it. I'm not saying necessarily it should be carried over. But
oh, please don't. Yeah. When you get AI to be consciousness, let's weed those out.
I am deathly afraid of the Nietzsche problem where I'm just like, one of them is like, yep, it's all just fake and made up. And I just sit here and just watch cat videos all day. I guess I'm already there. I'm really not far away from that.
I'm not sure what the problem with that is.
I had this amazing philosophy professor years ago who I had logic and philosophy from him. He described logic as being this amazing area of philosophy where you always have these rigorous answers, but you've got these very unexciting questions, but you always get answers.
Yeah, sure.
Whereas philosophy is the exact opposite. You have these super sexy questions, but you never get an answer.
Right, you never get to the answer.
And I was like, oh yeah, that's kind of a great way to depict these two. I think they go hand in hand really well.
It's amazing he taught both of them. And then when you think about it, of course he taught both of them.
He was
they're
great.
The same subject, basically. He left USC because he didn't want to be part of the Big 12.
Yeah, well, there's that. Oh man.
Big 10, the Big 7. What was it?
Big Google. I think they went with the Big Google, and then they're going to get broken up. What happens if the Big 10 gets broken up? Oh.
Like Google is going to get broken up? Yeah.
Like you're too big. We got to break you up into prime factorizations. That's what they're going to do.
All right, we have to get out of here, but quickly before we do, have you seen or read anything good this last week?
Well, yeah, now that you got me talking about it, I don't know what it's called anymore. Maybe the Big 12, who knows? College football season is here,
yes.
Which I'm not like a huge college football fan, but I do like observing from afar.
Sure.
And this season is going to be crazy and weird.
The apple cart has been upset in a huge way.
Without a doubt. I was not paying attention well this weekend, and I happened to see a score scroll by, and it was Washington State beat some team 70 points. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like Wazoo? Like who are they beating with 70 points? And they played Portland State. And then I remembered, oh man, these guys have no conference. They're the last two remaining teams in the Pac-12.
You got to fill in the Pac-12 with something.
Yeah. So then when I look at their schedule, and their schedule is just, it's sad. It's just terrible. It's all these like West Coast teams that they're playing San Jose State and San Diego State and like all these teams you'd normally play in your first game and just roll over.
Just to win.
But they've got nobody to play.
Every game is a homecoming game.
Like this is this new era of college football. And the FBS landscape has changed from the SEC went from 14 to 16 teams.
Sure.
So that's big.
Sure.
The Big 12 went from 10 down to 8 to 12 and then to 16. So there's 16 teams now. The Big 10 went from 14 to 16 to 18.
Kept the name the Big 12 though.
Well, that's what's so fascinating. The ACC went from 14 to 16 to 17. And then the Pac-12 went from 12 to 10 to 9 to 4, now to 2.
You think it was hard to get a TV contract before?
Yeah, no shit. Now it's only in black and white and only broadcast. But here's what's fascinating to me. The Pac-12 Pac-12 is still calling themselves the Pac-12. There are 2 teams.
They just put that one in very light gray.
They just put it in very light gray, and then every couple weeks, just make it a slightly darker gray, and just fade it all the way out until it's just like Pac-space 2. Like, that's what I think they should do. How they still exist is beyond me. But anyway, for us West Coasters, it's going to be super interesting to watch the Big Ten's first season with 18 teams, including USC, Oregon, Washington, and UCLA, which is apparently still playing football. I thought they gave up a long time ago.
They won.
When?
Their last game.
So anyway, so that was kind of fun to reset my brain and try to figure out who's playing what and why these schools are traveling all over. While the Pac-12 has changed its name several times, no team has left the Pac-12 since the 50s until now.
Oh, yeah.
That's bananas. That was me. How about you? How was your weekend?
I saw the Dodgers make history.
Oh, yeah? They won a game?
Not just won a game. The first 3 batters who came up to bat, the very first 3 Dodgers that came to bat, each hit home runs.
No, really?
3 in a row. Home run, home run, home run. It was jaw-dropping to see.
Who were they playing? UCLA?
The Diamondbacks, and you're going to say, well, of course, the Diamondbacks, but no, literally at the bottom of the first inning, the Diamondbacks came back.
No.
Not 1, 2, 3, but they still...
Not sequential?
They still tied up the score almost immediately.
Oh, that's crazy. Well, that actually sounds like a fun game.
Yeah, super fun. I mean, it's almost like a basketball score at that point when you're scoring that much. First of all, the Diamondbacks' home field, I think it's Chase, is basically a hitter's park.
Sure.
You do get a high score there just because of the way the park is engineered.
Yeah.
So my recommendation is going to be MLB baseball, which is right now, we're getting toward the end of our season, and it's really fun.
Well, normally this is where I'd tell you that I'd check that out, but I'm not going to check that out.
No, I know. Anytime there's a game where the first 3 batters each hit a home run is pretty mind-blowing. That is the episode.
Thank you for joining us for all this nonsense, a truly terrible podcast from our awful company. Visit us on the web at nonsense.productions. I'm CJ Little.
I'm Jeff Parker.
If you like this program, please follow, download, subscribe, and like at Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, Amazon Music, AntennaPod, iHeartRadio, Spotify, My Favorite Overcast, on your Zune, wherever you may get your podcasts from.
Nonsense uses the Arch Linux operating system with the KDE desktop for its editing systems. Infinite customization for maximum productivity with no ads and no bloatware. As always, open source and free. Special thanks to our floor director, Tara Chandler.
Thank you, Tara. We'll be here every Thursday morning for more nonsense. Please join us. I just don't see a world where you're not going to have conscious machines. More than ants, for sure.
How do you know?
Because they're going to fucking tell us.
What makes you think the ant's not conscious?
You know, I think the individual ant I don't find consciousness in. The group of ants.
Because why?
Part of it is I don't think they have enough meat. I feel like you need a little more RAM for consciousness.
The same thing you say about computers, I'm going to say about ants. What is it that makes you think that ant's not conscious? By the way, when the ant dies, this will blow your mind. When an ant dies, it loses 21 grams.
Even only weighs 2 grams to begin. Somehow it still loses 21 grams.
It's amazing. It's mind-blowing.
Little tiny souls.